brush again. All right. Ugh, can't believe that fish came and took it off the branch like that. That's awesome. Stay down. It's a chunk there too. You don't like that too much, do you? Get in there. Go. Go. I'm struggling here, folks. That's a fatty. Whoa! Same thing. I mean, you get out off the bank about 5, 6, 10 feet and get next to a little piece of cover, and that is a chunk. I want you to see how fat that fish is. That is an absolute chunk. That fish probably isn't, shoot, I took my ruler out. That fish is probably 17 inches, 18 inches maybe, but he's every bit of 3.5 pounds. That's nuts how big they are. They are absolutely gorged right now. Pretty fish. Whoa! Let's let her go here. I mean, they're biting so good. That one did the same thing. It was like, tonk, and the line went slack. I was like, oh yeah. I like when it feels like they cut your jig off. That's the thing about throwing a casting jig. You need to develop a sense, and it's just from fishing. It's not like it's some magic trick, but you need to it's called weighing your jig. You need to know how heavy the jig feels on the end of your line when there's nothing there. And that'll help you develop a sense. You know, I can tell when I'm pulled up against a rock and when I'm pulled up against a piece of wood, just because of how heavy or different the jig feels. And you know, that's not some secret trick. That's just, you know, you go on those days and you don't catch nothing and you're like, man, I hate a jig, it sucks. I mean, that's a chance for you to develop your feel with the lure and concentrate on keeping your line in a position where you can jack on a fish when he bites it. But you know, when I'm popping that, I'm weighing the jig when I do that. And sometimes the fish has it, you know, like I'll go to do that little reel back, you know, I'll reel back and catch my slack up. And before I go to pop it, he's already got it. But I pop it that first time, I realize that jig doesn't feel the same weight. I've weighed the jig enough that I know when I went to pop it, it was heavier than it should have been. And that's when you just gotta boom and get them quick. You can catch them flipping with a jig. You can catch them offshore with a jig. You can catch them casting in cold water with a jig. You can swim a jig. There's no time you can't catch them on a jig, in my opinion. Now, yes, there are times where they're probably biting something better. I'm sure of that. But if I only have one lure each month, I'm probably sticking with a jig all 12 months. And I'll just do different stuff with it. I think you could take a little round ball Aikens jig and do everything you need to do with it. I've caught them in super deep water on those little finesse jigs. And I've got several finesse jigs that I throw. I say that Aikens jig because that and like the Booza Bug and some of those small, you know, the Cumberland Procaster, those were some of the original finesse casting jigs. You know, the Aikens over in the Ozarks were catching them like crazy on those things. And then back in Tennessee on Dale Hollow and places like that, you know, the Booza Bug and the Cumberland Procaster and some of those guys were essentially doing the same thing, just on different lakes. But what I like about a jig is And like I said earlier, my biggest fish on this lake's 8.2, and it was on a football jig. So it's not only a numbers lure, but it's also a big fish lure. You catch tons of 1-pounders on it. I mean, bass don't care. It looks like something that'll fit in their mouth. You want it to look a little bigger and go after some big fish, you just put a big honking trailer on there. Bulk your skirt out. But I really like to cast a jig. It's a fun way to catch them. There's a piece of brush right there. There ought to be one right there. I'm trying to hold it in place on that branch. See if another one will come grab it off that branch. That was awesome. And that's another thing. These fish are not aggressive, but they ain't swimming out to the middle of the lake. They're roaming up and down through here. And that's a thing I think a lot of people miss in catching fish in general is if you find a place where you catch 1 or 2 good ones, one pass is not going to get it done. You're not going to catch them all in one pass. Because you have to think of it like this. I threw my jig up here. Well, say the fish swam down here. He's swimming down here just kind of cruising and looking around. So I missed him. We didn't intersect. He was going one way, I was going this way. So I go down here and I turn around, I come back and I throw my jig in here. Now he's coming back. And as I'm working my jig, he's coming right to it. And that's how you kind of have to think about fishing, you know. They ain't just sitting in one spot waiting for you to land on their head. Now they are sometimes, but I think you have to realize that a bass doesn't just sit still. He ain't waiting for a lure to punk him in the head. He's going around the ones that are eating. I mean, they're going around looking for something to eat. I'm pretty sure crawfish won't swim up and get in their mouth. They're gonna have to go over and get it, so.
When you're going on the fishing trip of a lifetime, don't be the guy who forgets the Rapalas.